We are back here now on the final segment of today's show just to get into more of the continued series on predicting the final standings for each division in the NFL. Yesterday we mentioned the NFC East for real that time, and now we're going to mention the NFC South. And just right off the bat, getting into it, this one I felt was a little bit easier to do than the NFC East. And with that being said, two finished last. Obviously, I don't think I'm going to get too many differing opinions on this. I still think it's going to be the Panthers because we are still at the start of this entire thing, right? We thought we were at the start of it last year, but obviously it went really bad really quick, so they had to tear it all down, bring in new players, bring in a whole new regime with a new young head coach in Dave Canales after impressing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So you're starting from step one yet again. So with that being the case for the Panthers and the Falcons getting better, the Saints still a decently built team, the Bucks coming off of a division championship, the Panthers are just the odd man left out, and it's their second try with Bryce Young also. I think we haven't really gotten a chance to see what he is and what he has to really offer. So again, you fired Bryce Young's first head coach in Frank Reich, so now he has to learn a whole new system, adapt to that, and really learn that, and hopefully that will be a head coach, a system that will be with him for a couple of years now to really see some growth. So we don't really know what we have there yet with Bryce Young, and also, they're coming off of a 2-15 year. I don't know if there's ever been such a drastic jump from 2-15 to like 9-8 or like 10-7 or something like that. I think that's really stretching it, but they did upgrade at certain positions that should help them along the offensive line, bringing in two new guards in that offensive line, bringing in Deontay Johnson as well, drafting Xavier Legette out of USC, most notably also to help Bryce Young. And it's hard, honestly, I just mentioned their record, it's hard to be worse than 2-15. So we're going to get some improvement. I really do believe that. I like Dave Canales. I think he did a good job with Baker Mayfield, but now it is something to point out, to remember that this is his first gig as a head coach at 43 years old. So how does he also adapt and learn as this process goes along will be something that does affect their overall season. But for right now, I feel like the Panthers, not too much to see there. They're still in a learning, developing process right now. I don't think they're by any means close to contention status, but that is the fourth team, a team that I predict to finish last in the division. Then to finish third, not so different from last year, the New Orleans Saints, I feel, or actually, they didn't finish third, they finished second, but this year they're getting a little bit worse, and I feel like now we're going to start to see some more changes happening with the Saints team, because they've had a pretty bad cap situation, one of the worst, if not the worst, in the NFL for the last couple of years, which has prevented them from really going out there and testing the market, bringing in guys that they truly need, especially on that offensive line with Ryan Ramczyk now out. They didn't re-sign Andreas Pete also, so that offensive line and how it holds up for Derek Carr is going to be huge. Is Derek Carr the long-term answer for this team? I think that depends highly on Dennis Allen, if he's also the long-term option at head coach for this team, because again, they finished 9-8 last year, but I feel like this could be a year of regression a little bit more, especially with the Falcons getting better. I think the Bucks are still a formidable team. So not only if they get worse, but I feel like if they stay around the same, I think it's too much of the same thing at this point, and they're going to need to find a different head coach, a different voice, some more ideas to come in there and get this Saints team out of the mud that they're stuck in. And I say that, but they still have some good players. They're veterans like Cam Jordan, still in there as well. Demario Davis is still playing, still their starting linebacker. Tyrann Mathieu also still there, but they did add some good young, exciting players like Willie Gay, a linebacker in free agency. Chase Young should bring in some more pass rushing options for them. Pete Werner is a guy that they're really excited about as well. They drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama, and they have Brian Brees as well, a couple years removed from Clemson and being a formidable player there. So they have some players in there, obviously. Chris Olave, a big-time playmaker for them as well. But in most of their positions, it feels like they haven't changed too much, and it just feels monotonous at this point. And to me, when I describe something as monotonous, it just feels like average, middle of the table. And third place, because they can't get worse than the Panthers, is where I see the Saints finishing in 2024. And that could ultimately lead to them finding a new head coach and potentially parting ways with Derek Carr. And then at that point, you're really going to need a big change anyway. So that's sort of my predictions to go along with the my predictions on where they're going to end up in the division. But then it gets to the final two teams, and the final two teams, I think, were close, but also I've been pretty convinced with not this team, the first place team, obviously, when I will get to them. But for right now, the Bucs, I think, will finish second overall in this division, because it's hard to live up to these expectations a lot of the times, especially if, it is your first time going around. It is your first time sort of like being in this scenario where you're looked upon as one of the better teams in that division, arguably one of, if not the best team in that division. So living up to that after a season where I don't think a lot of people had the Bucs penciled in to be as good as they were, let alone win the division. Now they're in new territory, similar to other teams like the Texans and things like that. But with the Bucs, it was positive that they were able to bring back Mayfield, Evans, and Antoine Winfield. But even still, with those guys in the lineup, they finished 9-8 last year, and it was more so the case that the rest of the division was pretty bad. Honestly, the Falcons, with how talented they were, they finished like 7-10. The Saints, not too special, not too exciting. They finished 9-8 as well. And the Bucs, still bringing back the same team and losing some pieces along the way, like Devin White and Carlton Davis. I feel like there could be some hiccups there. I like Baker Mayfield. I don't think it's going to be a case where he just falls off the face of the earth or anything like that. But I feel like living up to those expectations now, not really upgrading drastically, or at least as drastically as the Falcons have, would just bump them down a peg and move them into second place. I think they're going to be around that same record as well. They have one of the easiest schedules in the entire NFL. This entire division does, because of having the Panthers in there, the Saints a little bit in there as well. They have one of the easiest schedules as well. But even saying that, I feel like they are still going to be a middle of the pack team, 10-7. I don't think they'll get more than 10 wins. I think 10-7 is their max, but 9-8 or something like that, or 8-9, I wouldn't be surprised that the Bucs are hovering around those records come the end of 2024. And also, just lastly to mention here, the departure of Dave Canales, just mentioning him and how he sort of turned everything around for Baker in just 1 year. Now Baker sort of essentially has to just go out there and do it all on his own. And is he ready to do that? Is he prepared enough to be the guy, take in a new system, learning a new scheme under a new voice, and how their relationship is? That's also something to keep in mind if we do see this offense struggling at some point in time. It could be because of that, because of a lot of new things changing. But to me, they are still more competitive. They have more talent than the Saints and the Panthers. So I think second would be just a minor digression here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then everyone's favorite, I've converted over to being a Falcons fan, at least for the NFC side of things, at least in this division, actually, I should say. In this division, it's too hard to go against the Falcons at this point in time. I've been really impressed with just everybody that they've added, not just the players as well, but their head coach, Raheem Morris, very big fan of him. His time in Los Angeles as the defensive coordinator, he just seemed like he was ready to take this next step. He was the interim head coach at one point in time, but it's a different sort of responsibility, a different job when it is your main thing to do. So bringing him in, I'm a big fan of. Also, their new offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, also from the Los Angeles Rams, and how prolific their passing game was, with him being a major contributor of that, now fitting in with all these new toys and weapons that he has at his disposal, I think is going to be a smooth transition with Pitts, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Bijan, Tyler Algier, all these guys that are very good, very young still at their positions as well. I think Zach Robinson could really take advantage of that. Their offensive line is also very underrated. You saw it with a great running game, and even in pass protection as well. A lot of the issues they had with the passing game last year, I don't think it was a case where the offensive line was, giving them no time. It was more so the decision making by some quarterbacks in those games. So that's the offensive side of the ball, obviously, and how they've improved overall and on that side. But I didn't even mention Kirk Cousins, right, coming over as well. That just went over my head. But that's going to be obviously a major improvement. But on the defensive side of the ball, just recently, my biggest issue with them was the fact that they didn't address that. Yeah, their offense is great, but you need some defense in there to really have me at least believe that you were going to be a major player in this year's NFL regular season. And they went out and did that exactly. They went out and got Matthew Judon. They signed Justin Simmons, and now you form a great duo alongside Jesse Bates, who you see there on your screen. Judon is right away their best pass rusher on the edge, at least, to go along with Grady Jarrett in the inside. And on top of everything, the frosting on top of everything, they have the easiest schedule in the NFL. What more can go right for the Falcons at this point? They got so much better, and now they have the easiest schedule in the NFL. So really staying healthy is one of the only troubles I see with this team and sort of hindering that. Maybe if the worst thing that could happen is Kirk Cousins getting hurt, knock on wood that doesn't happen, but really I can't point out something drastic that they need to really address, because they've done a great job of doing it here in the last days of the offseason, now fully turning their attention to the Pittsburgh Steelers and hosting them in week 1 of the regular season. And it's going to go a long way. It's always good to have a good start if they're able to win that game. But that is pretty much all my predictions for the NFC South Division, how I believe it'll turn out in a few months down the road now when everything is said and done. But leave your guys' thoughts on what you think of my predictions and your thoughts on how you think the NFC South is going to turn out. But for right now, that'll do it for the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. Thank you guys for joining me on today's show. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as following the network on all forms of social media, and check out more content around the NFL and this show on both YouTube channels, the GSMC Podcast Network channel and the GSMC Sports Network channel as well. Make sure to catch every live episode every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, catching more of breaking news like we had today, more headlines across the NFL with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thank you for joining me again on today's show, and hopefully you guys join me back again to end the week on tomorrow's show.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't that great. I don't wanna go to